Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Resilience 101. This is our second class in a 5-day series on how to develop resilience, how to become emotionally stronger, and how to keep putting that resilience into action. I'm Dr. Perry Mandanis. I am a psychiatrist and the host of a podcast called Couch Stories, and it's all about resilience. I tell my own stories. I interview other people to tell me about times in their lives when they may have struggled, what they learned from that struggle, and how they developed resilience and keep putting their resilience into action over and over and over. I have more than 25 years of experience helping people to overcome struggles. And I hope that some of the ideas that I've learned over these many years I can share with you today so that you can put them into your life and be more resilient yourselves. What I'm not very experienced in, if you probably noticed from last night's episode, was that I'm not so great with the development of videos. And so the captions to the last video, once it got uploaded into Instagram, didn't quite all fit into the page. I'm also not going to be dancing and smiling and pointing at things and doing all of these clever videos about, mental health content that some of my colleagues know how to do. I'm just not very good at that, I think. But I will provide you with my notes. So you don't have to worry about the content showing up on the screen. All you have to do is write me at my website, www.couchstoriespodcast.com, and I'll be happy to email you all of my notes if you want the content for yourself. So let's start with a quick review from last evening's episode. I mentioned evening because I'm working at night. Maybe you're watching me during the day. I don't know. We talked about the development of resilience, and we said that it involves 4 keys, and those keys are relationships, physical and emotional wellness, healthy thinking, and living with purpose. Every day this week, I'm going to be taking on one of these keys in more detail so that you can learn a lot more about each one. And there's a reason why I made investing in relationships number 1. There's a great deal of science to support how important our relationships are to our health. If you haven't yet read the book, The Village Effect, Why Face-to-Face Contact Can Make Us Healthier and Happier, by psychologist Dr. Susan Pinker, I strongly recommend it. And if you don't have time right now to read her book, you can find her on her TED Talk. She gives a terrific TED Talk with an excellent summary of her research on why relationships matter so much. And for one thing, people who develop relationships, maintain them, stay in touch, and treasure their relationships are often more physically and emotionally healthier and more resilient, if you will. Also, she points out that she studied lots and lots and lots of factors why certain people live longer, like their physical health, their income, their health care, their education. And the one factor that kept turning up over and over as the single most important factor for longevity, for living longer, was the quality of your relationships. Dr. Pinker was talking about our relationships with other people, of course. Today, I'd like for you to think about your relationships in another way. I want you to think about developing resilience in terms of 3 different relationships. 1 is your relationship that you have with your community. 2 is the relationship that you have with the people that are closest to you, like your coworkers, your friends, and your family. And 3, your relationship that you have with yourself. And while that may be the smallest in terms of the number of people who are involved, 1, sometimes the relationship with yourself can be the most challenging relationship of all. Your relationship with your community, let's get started there. That means things like attending a church, participating in your child's school activities and the other parents that are there, volunteering at your local library, being a part of a service organization, things like that. Obviously, during the pandemic, these types of big group activities may be a lot more difficult. Some of them are actually still happening on Zoom. Many churches are offering their church services on Zoom, and they're even having their social hour where everybody that is part of the community can say hello to each other, have a cup of coffee together, just like they would have if they had been in their community hall together. Now that schools are open and they're offering a kind of a mixture of virtual plus in-class classroom activities, those of you who are parents are probably more involved than ever in your child's classroom. I hope you'll consider keeping that up when the pandemic is over, because your schools need your support and your input. And I think you're going to find out that when you help your school, you're not only helping your children, but it's going to help you feel more empowered about your child's education when you know that you've had a role in it. It's really important. Sometimes making new connections in your community can be a source of resilience as well. For example, there are a lot of online book clubs right now. All you have to do is search for them, sign up, read the book that people are talking about, and then join them for the meeting, and you're going to meet a few people. And what's nice about that is when you're meeting new people and you're not doing it face-to-face, having a specific thing to talk about makes it easier to get that conversation started and to make the connection. When it's going to be on a video conference, that's a little bit more awkward. And finally, we cannot possibly discuss having relationships in our community without at least mentioning social media in passing, because it's really important right now. I'm sure that if you're a lot like me, you have been in contact with old friends from high school, or the town that you used to live in, or your last job. Often, we connect with people on social media that we haven't seen or spoken with in years. And yet, it's really cool and fun to see what they're doing, to follow their children, to see what their travels are, to hear of a wedding, and to offer them our condolences if they've lost a loved one in their family and they're hurting. Social media has made it much easier for us to stay connected with each other from miles away just simply by following our posts. I can't even imagine what that pandemic of 1918 was like without telephones, without the internet, without social media, without even television in order to get updates and news. Of course, advances in healthcare may have played a role in why that pandemic was so much worse than the one we're having now, but I tend to think that their lack of social connection may have played a big part in why so many people died 100 years ago. Today, what I think is really exciting about social media is it's an easy way for you to track people down. You don't have to know their phone number. You don't have to know their address. You can just direct message them. And I highly recommend that you do that. Send a DM to somebody who you follow, that you used to have a relationship with, you haven't talked to in ages. Throw out your phone number and see if you and that person can have a telephone call. I just did this with one of my old friends from medical school named Ruth. Ruth, I'm shouting out to you right now. We had a wonderful chat, caught up on our careers, caught up on our families and our children and our desire to travel and all those kinds of things. And what now happens for me when I see Ruth's posts on social media is I feel more connected to her just from one single conversation. So whenever you can take the time to make some of your connections stronger or real or more personal, reach out and make that happen. Okay, so now let's talk about your relationship with your coworkers and your friends and your family. If you're going into work, you may have noticed that people are still keeping their distance and we're not hanging out with each other in close quarters maybe like we used to. And if you're working from home, you also may have noticed that when you video conference for a meeting, there's really not any social time at all. We're kind of all missing that cup of coffee during the quick coffee break or catching up on each other's lives during lunch. But why? Why are we doing that? Why not do it now? even over video conferencing. I just spoke with a young man who's in the insurance industry who said that his coworkers have decided that at the end of their workday, they're going to have virtual happy hour together so that they can finally catch up. They used to go out for happy hour occasionally after work. We can't do that right now because a lot of these places are closed and aren't serving cocktails. So they're doing it virtually in their homes. I think that's a terrific idea. Maybe you can be that person who takes the initiative to recommend something like that to your coworkers. Suggest a 15-minute coffee break in the middle of the day where you get together on Zoom just for a social chat, not to talk about work. I think that personal touch is going to help you feel more connected to your coworkers. Next, we've got our closest friends and our family. These are the people who know us best. These are the people that you know best. You want to reach out and talk to them, and I mean really talk. If you need something, tell them. If you're feeling down, tell them. Let your friends and your family know what's going on in your life and let them know how you're feeling so that you do not let yourself slip into isolation. I can tell you that when I was feeling pretty empty a few months ago, I found that it was much better not to hide how I was feeling. And I'm kind of used to doing that as a psychiatrist. I rarely share a lot of my personal shit with people. But this was one of those times when I did the opposite of that. I reached out to my friends. I let them know that I was struggling. And you know what happened? They called me every single day. They texted me every single day. They reminded me that they loved me. I was reminded of my love for them. And now that I'm much better and we're kind of out of it, I feel so much closer to these people. It's incredible how tight we became. So I consider this a very important part of resilience. You do not have to be resilient by yourself. You've got lots of people that you can call on, and they will be there for you. They see you, and you see them. What has happened is people have, during the pandemic at least, they're not as intimate with each other. They just kind of like stay to themselves, and they're afraid to maybe share their soft underbelly, their weaknesses when they feel vulnerable. I think right now is the time to allow yourself to be vulnerable and to show other people your soft underbelly. And when you have needs and when you have feelings, you will be closer as a result. And don't forget, share your stories. That's one of the nice things about hanging out with your friends and your family. You will share stories with each other. And you remember, I say this all the time on Couch Stories, one story is the shortest distance between two people. What happens is you remember the story for years and years. Sometimes you talk about the story. Sometimes you joke about the story. It just keeps showing up in your relationship. It takes on a life of its own. So make sure you're sharing your stories, because I think that's another very important way for you to stay in touch with people. So in summary, developing resilience by reaching out to other people that you feel closest to is the way of asking for their support and then offering them your support when they need it as well. It'll bring you closer to each other, and it's going to make you emotionally stronger. Now, finally, let's take some time to think about the relationship that you have with yourself, because that too is critically important in the development of resilience. I want you to take some time to create some self-love habits. This can be as simple an action as just making your bed in the morning, because when you come back to the room at the end of the day and you see that the bed is made, you're going to be really happy about that. Or it could be simply something like buying a new tea that you haven't tried yet and having a cup of tea. You want to just enjoy some of these simple things and be present with them and really fully appreciate them. I'm also very fond of affirmations. Telling yourself how good you are, reminding yourself of that. You can put sticky notes up all over your house to remind you. Check out my friend Amber Valdez. She has a terrific product called Sticky Affirmations, and they're already printed, and all you got to do is put them around your house. Amazing. You don't have to create them or write them, and that way you'll have these Post-it notes so you can be your own cheerleader. Earlier, when I was talking about investing in your relationships, I recommended social media as an outlet for staying in touch with other people. But when it's time to focus on yourself and on your relationship with you, I would suggest you turn social media off for a while so you're not distracted by it, and you're not distracted by getting sucked into comparison. Sometimes that's an easy thing to do on social media. You see what someone else is doing, what fantastic travel they've got, how much weight they've lost, all those kinds of things, that we compare ourselves to them, and it doesn't make us feel so good. So turn social media off, take a break from it, and you will be glad that you did. When you're taking time out for yourself, you want to just take some time to be present with yourself in quiet. Just breathe and be present with yourself. And the thing that I am most fond of, that I think is the most important thing that you can do for a healthy relationship with yourself, is to train yourself to scan for things that you are thankful for. Take the time for gratitude. Most of us have much more to be thankful for than we do to complain about, even during the pandemic. So focusing on gratitude is just about the single most powerful tool that you can use to have a healthier relationship with yourself, because it is virtually impossible to be grateful and anxious, grateful and angry, grateful and depressed at the same time. Gratitude is a catalyst for enjoying yourself more. And you can see enjoy has that word joy in it. Joy is the key here. The more joy that you can create, the more joy you will appreciate and notice, and the more resilient you're going to be. It's going to help you face situations that aren't so joyful when you take stock of gratitude when it's happening. Okay, so what's your homework for tonight? Last night asked you to build 2 lists. One list were coping strategies that did not work for you the last time you were feeling stressed out, and the other one was coping strategies that did work for you. What I want you to do today is, since today's episode is about relationships, I want you to take a look at those 2 lists. Put a big star beside the items that have to do with relationships that are on your coping list that worked well. And those items, the ones that have a star on them, you're going to ultimately move that down to your resilience blueprint at the end of this course. Now take a look at the list that didn't work so well. If you see some relationship problems on that list, think about what maybe went wrong and what you would like to improve now that you got hindsight, and how you might handle situations differently in order to improve those relationships. And if you're looking at your 2 lists and you don't see a lot of relationship activity or a lot of relationship information, take some time to think about how you can invest in relationships and create some relationships. There is no time like the present for developing new relationships, for reaching out, and for investing in improving the connections that you already have. So thank you again for joining me today. I'm going to see you guys in class again tomorrow, when we're going to look more closely at our physical and our emotional wellness as a part of developing more resilience. Until then, take care, everyone.